I just wanted to comment on one of the interesting disparities between people in the West and people from the global majority. Now, this is a generalization, so don't take it too seriously. There's always exceptions. People from the West have been looking at the Gaza genocide with a degree of shock and disillusionment and a sense of alienation because they can't fathom that Israel, this state of democracy and rights and rule of law, would commit genocide. Whereas people from the global majority were straight away like, this is fucking genocide, man. Right after 7th of October, when it had become clear what had happened, and there was those initial statements that got made from the Israeli ministers, it was obvious to me that they were then going to exterminate the full population of Palestine, because that has always been the habit of Western European states. That is the history of colonization. That is exactly how these states even became rich in the first place. Our people have always had histories, remembrance, cultural understanding that this is what Western European states do. They have done it time and time again, and we have always been observing it and cognizant of it. And so when this happened, it was obvious that genocide was about to happen. Whereas some of my colleagues from the West, they couldn't get it. They said, this is self-defense. And, you'd be like, well, they just bombed out an entire hospital. They're like, it must have been a mistake. And you'd be like, well, why is 70% of all of the people killed women and children? And they're like, statistics. And they're finally waking up now to how utterly ugly and depraved the political system is that has allowed them to stay how they are. And it's a kind of like looking in the mirror moment where they realize, oh shit, we have been doing this. But I don't really have any sympathy for that anymore. Because if you haven't that after the Iraq war, after the Libya war, after what they did to Syria, what they did to Yemen, and what they've been doing for centuries in Kashmir, where I'm from, in Kenya, in Namibia. These are places that have been utterly decimated by European powers that came over and exploited all of the wealth and killed everyone off, burned villages. The Amritsar massacre, they turned up in a sacred place of worship and just massacred everyone there. In Afghanistan, there was a whole period where the British were burning whole civilian towns alive as retribution for when a British person got killed. So that collective punishment and burning people alive, it's a very British thing. They've been doing that for centuries. So if you haven't figured that out, if you're still shocked that Israel could do this, it's because you haven't looked at yourself in the mirror. You haven't looked at your culture in the mirror. Unfortunately, this is also probably true of people from the global majority. We haven't really paid much attention to the reality of how the world is how it is. And unfortunately, in the Fanon terms, there are too many people with black skin and white masks who, instead of trying to reconcile this ugly history and assert themselves and say, I'm proud to be black, I'm proud to be brown, I'm not going to be a victim just because you tell me that I am. I'm going to be beautiful regardless. Not enough people have done that. Instead, they wear white masks, right? And they pretend that they are not from where they are from. They pretend that their parents and their grandparents have not endured that suffering and instead just say, you know what, fuck it, I'm okay. A lot of people like Suella Braverman, a lot of people like David Lammy, these people with black skin and white masks who are actually complicit in genocide, who are actually doing the same slaughtering that their parents and grandparents' generations suffered, because rather than dealing with that fact and actually trying to assert themselves, they've actually just put on a white mask and says, all good for me. So fuck those guys, and also fuck everyone else who's actually shocked at what Israel's doing, because you haven't been paying attention to what we've been telling you for centuries. So fuck off.